Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the wet, cold, deeply uncomfortable world of medieval warfare, not the noble stuff from shiny movies, but the grimy, bone-knocking real deal. You'll wake up in a sagging canvas tent, your head pounding from whatever counted as ale last night, and your armor already managing to stick to you in new and terrible places. It's not even sunrise, and you're pretty sure something died in your boots overnight. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're listening from, and what time it is for you. I'm always curious. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your eyes open to a blanket of mist pressing down on the muddy earth around your tent. There's a weight on your chest, literally, because you fell asleep half wearing your chainmail again. Rookie mistake. The links tug at your undershirt, which is soaked through with sweat and whatever that mystery stain is you picked up yesterday during latrine duty. You really don't want to think too hard about that. The air is cold enough to see your breath, which would be lovely if it didn't reek of garlic, ale, and regret. You try to stretch your limbs, only to remember you slept curled around your helmet, using it as a pillow. Romantic, in theory if romance, means a crick in your neck, and a faint taste of mildew in your mouth. Outside the tent flap, the world is mud. Not just mud, but medieval mud dents, sticky, and utterly uninterested in letting go of your feet. You slosh over to the communal water barrel, which is more backwash than hydration at this point, and splash your face. It doesn't help. It's not even cold anymore, just vaguely slimy. A frog leaps out from under the rim. You both scream a little. Your comrades are already groaning their way into upright positions. There's Hans, who sleeps in his boots and hasn't bathed since the last lunar eclipse. You suspect he's developing a second personality, just from fungal exposure. Then there's Etienne, the French archer who claims he once seduced a duchess. Mid-battle, he tells that story at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, probably because it's the only thing standing between him and a full nervous breakdown. As you trudge toward roll call, a trumpet blows only. It's not a trumpet, it's just Rymar trying to clear his throat after catching something from last week's swamp skirmish. Honestly, it sounds like a goose being strangled underwater. The sergeant gives you all a once-over and mutters something about God's holy patience, which is ironic coming from a man with a dagger for a toothbrush. No one's eaten yet, and morale is somewhere between my horse kicked me in the shin and I stepped on something that squelched back. You're still shaking off sleep when the first task of the day is announced: muck detail. Apparently the horses managed to foul half the supply area overnight, and now you and 3 unfortunate souls have to clear the mess with shovels made from warped wood and bitter dreams. Fun fact, historians still argue whether most medieval warriors had set morning routines, or if they just stumbled from one task to the next in a fog of exhaustion and bad wine. Either way, you're here now, lifting one steaming pile of misery after another, while pretending you're earning glory. As you work, your chainmail starts to chafe along the neck and shoulders. It's not just heavy, it's also rusty, scratchy, and smells faintly of every person who wore it before you. The padding underneath, called a gambeson, is supposed to soften the load, but yours is mostly sweat, hay, and mold now. A walking sponge, essentially. One that screams every time you try to move. Oh, and your feet. They've been wet for 3 days straight. The boots are cracked at the seams and filled with some kind of medieval stew made from rainwater, horse urine, and crushed regret. You've stopped taking them off at night because the last time you did, a small toad crawled inside and claimed squatters' rights. A fringe belief held by some chroniclers was that wearing iron armor purified the soul, sort of like sweating out demons. You're pretty sure if that were true, you'd be a saint by now. More likely, you're just very sweaty and slightly haunted. Breakfast comes, if you can call it that. A crust of bread so hard, it could be used in place of a mace. A smear of something cheese-adjacent, and a few questionable beans. You chew slowly, not because you're savoring the flavor, but because you're trying to stretch the time before the next awful task begins. You sit on a nearby rock, gazing out across the misty field, and reflect briefly. You could have been a cobbler, a quiet life, shoes, maybe a cat. Instead, here you are, peeling leeches off your calf, and wondering whether that itch means lice again. The tent next to you collapses with a wet plop. Another poor soul, learning that medieval tent ropes are more hope than function. A horn sounds in the distance, not an attack. Not yet. Just the daily summons for formation review, which is code for stand still in the cold, while the nobles bicker about strategy none of you will ever understand. You sigh, strap your battered helmet back on, and start the long, squelchy walk toward the waiting crowd. You haven't even reached the battlefield, and already you're stiff, sore, and mildly enraged by how much of war involves just being cold, tired, and coated in livestock waste. And here's the kicker, it's only just past dawn. The morning slop is still sitting heavy in your gut as you shuffle into the half-hearted formation. The sky hangs low, gray and grumpy, and you know it's about to rain again. Not a dramatic storybook downpour, but that passive-aggressive drizzle that soaks into your bones and whispers, you made bad life choices. A herald tries to bark out something inspiring, probably lifted from a saint's sermon. But no one hears a word over the collective sound of stomachs growling and armor creaking. You're preoccupied anyway, because your breakfast is fighting back that barley mush. Turns out it had ambitions to become glue. You can feel it congealing somewhere in your esophagus. There's no proper meal in sight. Until nightfall, if there even is nightfall. Depending on whether today ends with a battle, a retreat, or a spontaneous bout of dysentery in the middle of a wheat field. The barley stuff is cheap, filling, and depressingly common among medieval armies. Add a few onions if your camp's quartermaster hasn't lost them to gambling. And you've got the de facto soldier's breakfast. No eggs, no sausage, no flapjacks. Just cold, bland, survival in bowl form. You glance over at Mikkel, who is gnawing on something that might have once been a turnip. Or a rock, it's unclear. He's not chewing so much as grinding, and you swear you hear one of his molars snap. He doesn't stop eating those, 'cause that's the rule. You eat what you're given, no matter how questionable. One guy last week was seen licking grease off a wagon wheel because someone told him it might have been pork once. Historians debate just how bad the average soldier's diet was. Some accounts suggest nobles had salted meats and fancy imported spices, while the rank and file chewed through sour bread and memories. Others argue that in a good season, rations could include smoked fish or dried fruit luxuries you've only ever heard sung about in bar songs. All you've seen this week is bean mash and a suspiciously stringy hair stew that tasted like old boots and gave you hallucinations. And speaking of hallucinations, Zetian is once again telling his favorite story. Between mouthfuls of clotted cheese, the time he seduced a duchess while hiding in a wine barrel during a siege. No one believes him, not because it is impossible, but because he always adds new details. Last time, the barrel was rolling downhill while he did it. Now, it's on fire. You nod politely, as is customary, and quietly pray he never asks you to verify it. But even bad food is a small mercy compared to the alternative. No food. Sometimes, a supply train goes missing, or a town refuses to surrender its stores. And suddenly you're left chewing leather scraps and pretending it's jerky. You once caught a man boiling his boots. He claimed the lining helped with digestion. You didn't ask questions, you just asked for a sip. Your meal, if you can call it that, ends with the traditional medieval dessert. Lukewarm water with a hint of iron, served in a cup that may or may not have been cleaned since the last plague outbreak. You try not to think about it, and then come the burps, the barley burps, a gift that keeps on giving. It's like your body is staging a rebellion, one bubble at a time. You take a deep breath and try to focus on the task ahead. Getting dressed, not metaphorically. Literally, dressing for war is not like slipping on your gym clothes. It's a multi-step ordeal that involves awkward squats, unexpected bruises, and at least one prayer to a minor saint of padding. First, the underlayer linen shirt that once had hopes of staying white. It's now a tapestry of sweat, mildew, and mystery stains that could have historical significance. Next comes the gambeson, a quilted tunic stuffed with wool, straw, or if you're unlucky, Random scraps of cloth that make you itch like you've angered 100 angry bees. It's heavy, hot, and smells like wet dog. You tie it with fraying cords that never seem to be in the right place. Then, you wiggle into your show's medieval leggings made of wool, clinging just enough to make you question your choices. There's no dignity left. It's long gone. Finally, the chainmail. It's hanging from a wooden peg, swaying like a threatening wind chime. You lift it barely, 50 pounds of iron rings, all ready to hug your torso in the least affectionate way possible. You grunt, wrestle with the sleeves, and finally wriggle into the thing like a very angry sausage. A sausage with dreams of surviving until dinner. There's a fringe theory that medieval chainmail was less about protection and more about social signaling, an iron peacock display to prove your worth. You don't care, you just want it to stop biting into your armpits. Once the mail is on, you add the coif of chainmail, food that turns your head into a medieval baked potato, and top it with a helmet that smells like the inside of a chimney. You can't hear anything now. Your world is muffled, itchy, and vaguely metallic. Breathing through the mail is like trying to nap inside a colander. The best part, you're not done. You still need your belt, your dagger, your sword, and if you're unlucky, your shield, which someone borrowed yesterday to paddle across a flooded creek. It still drips as you sling it onto your back, and now you're half-marinated. A few men adjust each other's gear, tightening straps and quietly muttering encouragement or insults. It's hard to tell the difference in this group. Someone's already complaining about their codpiece pinching, which is a conversation you're not emotionally ready to be part of. You glance down at your outfit, muddy, mismatched, absurdly heavy, and wonder how you ever thought this would be glorious. You wanted to be a knight, a hero. Instead, you're wearing 70 pounds of sharp regret, and hoping your lunch doesn't come back up before noon. Welcome to the morning routine of a medieval warrior. No glory, no glamour, just cold mush, tight straps, and a profound longing for a dry pair of socks. You're more metal than man now, and not in the cool, battle-hardened way, more like the creaky, half-rusted weather vane nailed to someone's barn. Every step you take in this armor feels like dragging a church bell behind you, and if you hear one more clang, rattle, or medieval wedgie forming between your legs, you might just defect to the Weavers' Guild and start a quiet life-spinning yarn. But there's no time to fantasize about career changes. The horn has blared again, which probably means assemble, march, or somebody's sheep wandered into the kitchen fire. You're never quite sure. Orders are barked, gestures made, and everyone kind of shuffles in the same general direction until someone yells loud enough to stop the confusion. The walk toward the staging grounds is short, but even a few dozen paces in full gear is like hiking with a reluctant anvil strapped to your torso. Each joint feels tighter than the last. Your thighs are rubbing together in a contest of friction, and you're starting to suspect your left armpit might be developing its own microclimate. The truth is, medieval armor wasn't designed with comfort in mind. Protection, yes. Breathability, not so much. The mail digs into your shoulders. The padded gambeson beneath it traps your body heat like a bear hug from a sweaty uncle. And everything downwind of your backplate is starting to smell like a cheese cellar after a flood. Mainstream history often paints a romantic picture of the knight or foot soldier, standing tall and brave in a field of banners. What it doesn't show is that most of these guys were quietly dying inside, crushed under gear, sweating out last night's spoiled ale, and trying not to fart loudly enough to echo off their helmet. You glance over at a young recruit whose chin is poking out awkwardly beneath his helm. He looks like a terrified turtle. You vaguely remember being that fresh-faced once, before the lice, before the trench foot, before that unfortunate incident involving a goat, a stolen sausage, and a very confused bishop. Today, you're not marching off to a glorious clash. Today, your company is on standby, which is medieval for hurry up and wait, and wait, and yep, still waiting. You're parked in a muddy clearing near the edge of the woods, told to stay alert while the commanders decide whether to attack, retreat, negotiate, or argue about lunch again. And so you wait. In the rain, again. It's not even a dramatic storm, just an eternal drizzle that dampens your soul. Your armor grows heavier by the minute as water soaks through every layer. Your gambeson starts squelching, and you realize with horror that your boots are now little personal puddles. You try shifting from foot to foot, but it just redistributes the moisture. Your socks make wet kissing noises with each step. Romantic. Medieval armies didn't move fast, and that wasn't just strategy, it was survival. Marching in full gear, on uneven terrain, with medieval road conditions non-existent meant everything took forever. A 10-mile march could stretch into 2 miserable days, complete with wrong turns, stolen supplies, and at least one guy getting attacked by a goose. You've seen it happen. Geese are ruthless. Some fringe historians claim that these long delays weren't bugs in the system, but features designed to give time for omens to appear, prayers to be said, and superstitions to be consulted. You wouldn't be surprised. One guy in your unit refuses to step on pine cones before noon. Another won't carry a spear longer than his cousin's arm. For reasons that remain a mystery. The delay drags on, and you're now playing the unofficial camp game. Guess that itch. Is it lice? Is it fleas? Is it a stinging nettle that got in your trousers somehow? You don't know. You just know you want it to stop. And scratching through chainmail is like trying to massage your back through a cheese grater. You pull off your gauntlet for a moment to adjust the strap on your wrist, and immediately regret it. Your hand is red, wrinkled, and smells faintly of rotten onions. Etienne peers over and mutters, "Ah, the hand of a true warrior." You tell him to shut up. He offers you a bite of his leftover turnip anyway. Friendship is complicated in the medieval trenches. Still waiting, still raining, still standing in the same muddy rut you made an hour ago. A noble rides past, his armor polished, his horse pristine, his breath probably minty. He's perched so perfectly on the saddle that you'd think he was born in it. He nods once, acknowledging your existence in the same way one acknowledges a moderately interesting rock. Then he disappears into the mist, surrounded by squires with better cloaks than your whole tent. You and your fellow grunts mutter in unison. It's not envy, exactly. It's more like a shared, silent agreement that if the noble falls off, that horse, no one will help him up unless there's wine involved. The waiting stretches longer. Your knees ache, your thighs burn, and your armor has started making a soft clinking lullaby every time you shift your weight. It's oddly soothing, in a sleep deprivation kind of way. Historians still argue whether standing in formation like this had real tactical value, or if it was just about appearances keeping. Soldiers visible and vaguely organized while commanders scrambled behind the scenes. Either way, it's hell on your calves. Someone sneezes behind you. Someone else coughs like a dying mule. The sergeant barks for silence, and everyone pretends they're not slowly falling apart from the inside out. You blink rainwater out of your eyes and stare off across the field. Somewhere out there is the enemy. Maybe, or maybe they're hiding in their own wet hole, waiting for the same orders you are. Maybe their boots are also soggy. Maybe their noble is just as pompous. Maybe their Etienne is also telling spicy lies about duchesses. The thought almost makes you smile. Misery loves company, and in the medieval world, there's no shortage of either. The command finally comes, not a shout, not a clear bugle note, but a vague hand wave from a man on a damp pony. Move out, someone mutters behind you, and like a sluggish river of iron and wet wool, your unit begins to ooze forward. Your boots squelch. Your back complains. Your helmet slides forward just enough to block one eye. It's not a march. It's a slow, rhythmic shuffle of human resignation. The guy in front of you smells like boiled cabbage and last week's regret, and you're pretty sure his sword is on backward. You don't correct him. It's too early to care. The road is less of a road and more of a churned-up trail of hoofprints, puddles, and discarded horse droppings. You step in something that squishes unnaturally. You decide not to investigate. After all, in medieval warfare, what you don't know can't traumatize you. Your armor, already damp, is starting to collect the rain in tiny reservoirs your elbow, joint, the fold of your greave, the ridge where your helmet meets your coif. Every step sends a trickle somewhere cold. You try to tilt your head to let it drain. It doesn't help. The water just finds a new home along your spine. Welcome to the true art of medieval warfare. waiting in horrible weather for nothing to happen. You were trained for combat, sure, but no one trained you for this. Endless mud, rotting tents, swollen ankles, and the quiet whimper of a man who just realized he forgot his belt, and is now holding his pants up with a piece of string. You pass a cart stuck in the muck. Two oxen heave against the load, while a boy slaps the wheels with a stick, and swears in a dialect no one understands. It's unclear whether he's helping, or just trying to summon ancient gods with bad grammar. The cart is full of barrels, likely salted fish, or spoiled grain. Either way, it smells like someone buried disappointment, and then dug it back up. Your own unit is growing restless. The knight-leading user Wilhelm of something Germanicus, riding slightly ahead, trying to look majestic, while his cloak sticks to the back of his wet horse. He's got that glazed look of someone deeply regretting his career path, but too noble to admit it. His horse, meanwhile, has decided to relieve itself mid-trot. The result splashes back onto your shield. You don't even flinch. You've transcended disgust. You're now on a higher plane of indifference. Despite all this, you're not headed to battle, not yet. You're just repositioning. Repositioning means another hilltop, another patch of forest edge, another long wait, while commanders argue about banners, terrain, and who accidentally moved the latrine too close to the supply tent. Historians still argue whether these endless repositionings actually had strategic value, or were just a side effect of medieval communication, which is to say, non-existent. Orders could take hours to reach different units, usually relayed by sweaty boys on foot who might get eaten by wolves, captured, or distracted by roadside bread. You trudge on, the rain lets up, only to be replaced by that special kind of damp fog that seeps through your clothing like guilt. Visibility drops. You can see maybe a few men ahead of you, their silhouettes shimmering like ghosts. Someone slips. Someone else laughs. Someone else throws up breakfast into a bush and insists they're battle-ready. Eventually, you stop. Not at a fortress. Not at a battlefield. Just a slightly flatter field than the last one. A few trees, a suspiciously wobbly wagon, and what may or may not be a burned-out hut. This is it. This is where you wait now. Again, and so the standing resumes. If you're lucky, a bored archer might start carving something obscene into a tree. If you're unlucky, that tree will be cursed by a local superstition, and your whole unit will now be convinced they're doomed. This has happened before. The minutes drag. A dog runs through the camp. No one knows whose it is, but it gets more cheers than the commander ever has. Someone tries to feed it moldy bread. The dog refuses. A true critic. You lean on your spear, trying to shift weight off your aching legs. Your toes have lost feeling. Your fingers are pruny inside your gauntlets. You attempt to stretch, but your armor creaks like an old gate. Somewhere behind you, someone is softly singing a song about cheese. It's not a war song, it's just about cheese. Honestly, not. Bad. You stare at the horizon, half expecting a trumpet, a battle cry, a sudden clash of steel. Instead, you hear a sneeze, then a long silence. Then the gentle flapping of someone's torn banner. Welcome to the life of a medieval warrior. Hours of aching anticipation. Soaked to the bone, praying for anything to happen, except maybe battle. Because let's be honest, you're not that eager. And yet, you remain. Because you have to. Because that's your post. Because in this world, obedience is survival. Even if it's soggy and smells faintly of horse. So you wait, and listen, and wait some more. At long last, something changes. It begins with a messenger riding in at a trot, mud splattered to his helmet, eyes wild like he's seen a ghost or worse. Another council meeting. He leans down, whispers something into Sir Wilhelm's ear, and promptly vomits off the side of his horse. The poor steed, to its credit, doesn't flinch. It's probably used to this. A collective murmur rolls through your company. People start straightening their helmets, tightening straps, shifting from foot to foot in anticipation or dread. You try not to get too excited. The last time this happened, the urgent news was that someone had accidentally stolen a bishop's chicken and caused a diplomatic incident. But this time, it feels real. The horn sounds, the one that means formation, forward line. You snap into position, or try to. Your left knee gives a little protest pop. Your shield's handle is damp and slippery, and your helmet is now fogging up from the inside. Still, adrenaline stirs. The kind that dulls pain and sharpens focus. Or, at the very least, makes you forget about the itch behind your knee for a few precious seconds. You move into formation. Shoulder to shoulder. Shield to shield. Blades at the ready. The long, awkward fight before the real fight begins. It's not like in the stories, where the enemy appears over a hill in gleaming armor, while some bard strums dramatically in the background. No, this is clumsy theater. Both sides spend hours just staring at each other across a wet, uneven field. Nobles ride up and down their lines, delivering loud speeches no one can hear under their helmets. A few standard bearers wave flags whose symbols you barely recognize. Etienne whispers, "Which side is ours again?" You ignore him. You squint. Across the field, you can just make out the shimmer of enemy movement. Not a glorious charge, just the occasional helmet bobbing above the grass line. Somewhere, over there, are men just like you, damp, bored, aching in places they didn't know they had muscles. You wonder if their boots are also filled with pond water. Then come the rituals. Somebody brings out a drum, not to inspire fear, but because that's what they do. It's tradition. The thump echoes across the foggy meadow, like a very lazy thunderstorm. The other side replies with a trumpetor, something that wants to be a trumpet, but sounds more like a goat sneezing into a pipe. Then the shouting starts. Not a war cry. No, we're not there yet. This is the declaration phase, where heralds from both armies ride out into the middle and read elaborate proclamations written by men who've never seen combat. They go on for ages. Flowery speeches about sovereignty, divine right, disputed borders, and someone's distant cousin marrying someone else's niece without proper dowry. None of this matters to you. You're just trying not to fall asleep standing up. Historians still argue whether these rituals were meant to intimidate the enemy, satisfy religious expectations, or simply give everyone a chance to psych themselves up or out. Some sources suggest these announcements were occasionally performed in Latin, which most soldiers didn't understand anyway. You'd be more impressed if they weren't all soaking wet and shivering. And then come the priests. Each side trots out their local holy man, who waves incense, mutters blessings, and flings water over the troops. Some soldiers kneel. Others cross themselves. One guy in the back is just using it as an excuse to sit down for a moment. You mutter your own prayer not to win, necessarily, but to avoid dying in an embarrassing way, like tripping over your own sword and landing face first in cow dung. There's a lull, an awkward silence where even the crows seem to pause. Both sides are waiting for someone, anyone, to make the first move. You shift your stance, adjust your helmet, and wonder whether now would be the right time to fake a sprained ankle. And then it happens. A distant horn blows not yours. The other side is forming up. Slowly, awkwardly. The kind of shuffle you'd expect from a bunch of wet, tired men who aren't exactly thrilled to die today. Their shields rise. Their spears tilt forward. The line begins to creep toward you. Your line doesn't move yet. It holds. You feel the tension building in your gut, that sickening twist of fear and readiness. The men around you are breathing heavily, now some muttering, some crying, some quietly burping up their breakfast barley. This isn't the moment of glory. This is the moment of waiting for the moment of glory. And it is, without question, the longest, most awkward phase of any medieval battle. You can hear the clang of weapons being drawn, the whistle of a nervous archer, loosing an arrow too early, the wet slap of someone slipping in the mud and taking two friends down with him. It's not a charge, it's a shuffle. An angry, metallic, exhausted shuffle. A fringe account from a 14th century monk claims that in one battle, both armies stood silently for so long that a cow wandered into the field, grazed, and wandered off again before anything happened. You believe it? This is that kind of energy. The enemy gets closer. You grip your weapon tighter. Someone farts, loudly. Everyone pretends not to notice. The waiting becomes unbearable. But you know the truth now. The real endurance test of medieval combat isn't the fighting. It's standing still in cold armor, while your body screams at you to run away, and your brain starts composing your will, based on how hard your right foot hurts, and then finalia. Command yours. A low growl from the sergeant. The signal. To brace, not charge, not attack. Just brace. You take one step forward, plant your feet, raise your shield, and pray to whoever's listening that when the next horn blows, you'll still be upright and breathing. The horn blows, not the friendly, confused goat sneeze horn from earlier. No, this one is sharp, shrill, immediate. It slices through the fog like a blade, and suddenly everything shifts. Shields clatter into place. Feet dig into mud. Your knuckles whiten around the grip of your weapon as the wall of enemy steel finally picks up speed. This is it. The charge isn't graceful. It's not choreographed. It's not the elegant, slow-motion cavalry run from a movie trailer. It's a mess. Men crash forward with all the grace of angry furniture being flung down a hill. They're yelling mostly to psych themselves up, or maybe because they just slipped and twisted an ankle. It's hard to tell. You don't yell. You breathe deeply. Slowly, you try to forget that your legs are stiff, your armor's chafing places no cloth should ever chafe, and your stomach has just done a full somersault. Then comes the crash. It's not a polite clang of swords. It's a teeth-rattling, rib-shaking impact, like slamming into a wall made of iron and elbows. You stagger, shield pressed tight to your chest, body jolted backward. Something hit your arm, sword, elbow, possibly a very determined squirrel butt. You stay upright. Your instincts take over. You swing. You miss. You swing again. Maybe you hit someone. Maybe it was a friend. You'll figure that out later. Right now, everything is chaos. Combat, in the medieval world, wasn't a dance. It was a drunken brawl in a thunderstorm, while wearing 70 pounds of wet laundry. You shove. You lurch. You scream more from panic than power. Around you, men grunt, yelp, cry out in Latin, French, something that might be Dutch, and then just noise. Just panic. There's no elegant footwork, no perfect form. You step forward and immediately trip over a fallen body. You don't know whose. You don't have time to care. You scramble back to your feet and raise your shield, just in time to catch a blow that rings through your bones like a cursed dinner bell. Historians argue whether medieval combat was truly organized beyond the first clash. The answer: probably not. After the initial formation breaks, everything devolves into small clusters. Desperate duels, and terrified men swinging wildly at anything that moves. There's no referee, no timeout, no gentle warning when someone's behind you. It's fast, it's random, and it's loud. Noise is everywhere. Metal on metal. Metal on bone shouts, screams. The distant horn trying to signal something, but no one can hear it over the roar. You don't know what's happening on the left flank. You don't even know what's happening 3 feet away. Your world is a tunnel of breath, sweat, and survival. Then opening a man in front of you stumbles. You react before thinking, slamming your shield forward, thrusting with your sword. Did it land? Did it matter? He's gone now, trampled by the tide of bodies. You stumble back, chest heaving. Your blade's heavy. Your arms are screaming. You can't tell if you're bleeding or if someone else's blood has splashed up your sleeve. There's a joke in your unit. If your sword sticks, just pick up someone else's. You thought it was funny. It's less funny now. When you're holding a blade that feels like molten iron, and you can't remember if your last swing was effective, or if you just hit a tree, you push forward. A banner falls nearby, someone's standard sliced at the pole. You see the rider trying to recover it, only to get dragged off his horse by 3 infantrymen, who look like they haven't eaten since Lent. One of them starts stabbing with something that used to be a spear but is now mostly splinters and rage. Quirky tidbit in some lesser-known skirmishes. Soldiers reportedly used farming tools, scythes, pitchforks, even rolling pins if no better weapon was available. You once saw a man knock someone out with a soup ladle. Today, anything sharp or heavy will do. You're separated, now disoriented, turned around. Where's your unit? Where's Etienne? You hear a familiar voice, shouting insults in French and guess he's still alive. You lurch toward the sound, suddenly dash nothing. A pause, the kind of moment where the battlefield breathes. You're not sure how long it lasts, seconds, minutes. But in this gap you take stock. Your shield's cracked. Your sword is slick. Your left knee is threatening to go on strike. And your mouth tastes like old pennies. You bend over to breathe, helmet sliding forward with a metallic thunk. The world narrows again, a shape looms. You raise your weapon too. Slow, a blow hits your shoulder, not hard enough to break, but enough to drop you to one knee. Pain explodes down your arm. Your fingers go numb. The attacker raises his axe again, but someone tackles him from the side. You don't know who. You don't ask. You just nod, breathless, and crawl toward the nearest pile of vaguely friendly bodies. You press against them, shield up, breathing through clenched teeth. You're bruised, dizzy. You might be crying a little, though it's hard to tell with all the rain and sweat. This is battle, not the clash of champions, not the noble duel on a hilltop. Just confusion, exhaustion, and a desperate hope that your side holds out a little longer. You peek over your shield. The field is a mess. Torn banners, limp limbs, mud painted with colors you don't want to think about. And still, it continues. Small fights flaring up like embers. Men retreating, regrouping, charging again in half-formed lines. And yet you're still here. You're still standing. Wounded, yes, but breathing. Clinging to the thought that maybe, just maybe, you'll see nightfall. Because for all its horror, this moment means you're alive. You don't notice it at first, but something's itching. Deep under your armpit, creeping slowly across your ribs. You adjust your gambeson, thinking maybe it's a stray bit of straw, or some rust flake from your chainmail. But the itch spreads up your neck, down your spine. You scratch through layers of fabric and metal, until your gauntlet gets stuck in your collar. Welcome to a lesser-known truth of medieval warfare. If the weapons don't get you, the wildlife living in your clothing just might. You're not alone. All around you, the army is scratching, behind shields, under helmets, in places that probably shouldn't be scratched in public. You share a glance with Mikkel, who's openly picking at a patch on his forearm the size of a pigeon. He's got something crawling near his hairline, and he's trying to kill it by smacking himself repeatedly with a ladle lice. Fleas, ticks you. Name it, they've claimed squatters' rights on your body. It's like your gambeson has turned into a tenement block for bloodsuckers. And just when you think you've reached peak discomfort, someone mutters the dreaded word. Scabies, you freeze. Scabies, the itchy whisper of the medieval trenches. Skin burrowing might so persistent and contagious that even leeches would politely decline to help. One of the lads calls it the nobleman's itch, though no one knows why, probably because it sounds better than crusty rash from hell. You're pretty sure you caught it last week, sharing a bedroll with 3 other guys during a rainstorm. Or maybe it was the time you dried your socks on a communal pike. It's hard to pinpoint when exactly your skin became a playground for invisible invaders. Historians still debate just how widespread these infestations were. Some claim they were an accepted part of soldier life. Others think chroniclers downplayed the issue to preserve the image of noble knighthood. But the archaeological record says otherwise. Traces of lice combs, medicated salves, and desperate scribbles in field diaries saying things like cannot sleep, scratching like a cursed goat. And here's the kicker. There's no real cure, not one available to a common grunt like you, anyway. The field medica man with one eye, no fingers on his left hand, and the bedside manner of a drunken bearfors, you a bomb made from ash, pig fat, and ground walnut. He claims it'll smother the demons. You decide to pass. Instead, you borrow Etienne's trick. He swears that rubbing garlic on the rash will help. He's wrong. Now you're itchy and smell like a haunted stew. You try bathing, but the nearest wash area is just a swampy stream where someone upstream is using it as a latrine. You submerge your hands anyway, desperate. A toad floats by. You sigh. Back at camp, someone tries lighting a fire in the rain to dry their underthings. The smoke only makes your eyes water. A pair of woolen trousers steams ominously over the flames, and you swear they start hissing. Everyone backs away. As night creeps in, the itch worsens. It's not just your armpits now, it's your thighs, your back, your ears. You scratch until your fingernails turn black. The guy in the tent next to you has started whimpering rhythmically. You recognize the tune, an old lullaby, disturbing, the weirdest part. There's comfort in knowing you're all suffering together. There's solidarity in the scratching, like battle scars, but weirder. You sit in a circle with your unit, comparing bumps, boils, and bite marks. It's gross, yes, but also oddly bonding. Etienne even gives his rash a name. He calls it Clotilde. You do not ask why, and still, through the discomfort, through the itching and the shame and the burning behind your knees, you know that this is all part of the medieval warrior experience. Not just the blade and shield, but the constant assault of parasites. You're not just fighting men, you're fighting your own laundry. There's a fringe belief in some regions that warriors who suffer intense itching before battle are blessed by mischievous saints. Supposedly, it's a sign that the skin is shedding sin. You suspect it's just lice. Still, you whisper a sarcastic prayer to Saint Sepulchre, patron of annoying things, and continue scratching. The healer passes by again, offering a mix of vinegar and crushed lavender. You drink it. It helps nothing. Later, someone says it was meant to be applied, not swallowed. You shrugged. The damage is done. As sleep time approaches, your armor comes off in slow, sticky layers. Everything smells like mildew and onions. You finally peel off your gambeson, revealing the full extent of your new epidermal horror. Blotches, scratches, and angry red trails. You look like a map to somewhere cursed. You try to sleep. You fail. The itching continues. You toss, turn, swat at invisible bugs. You suspect you're hallucinating. You definitely saw your own elbow crawl away. Or maybe that was Etienne's foot again. It's too dark to tell, and somehow this is preferable to more fighting. Because at least, with rashes, you can complain loudly, and sometimes other people nod in agreement. It's the great unifier of medieval warriors, the shared suffering of the skin. Eventually, you drift into a half-sleep, one arm hanging out of the blanket for airflow, one leg twitching uncontrollably. You dream of being clean, barefoot in a sunny meadow, free from wool and metal, and the inexplicable bite of unknown creatures. Then a flea bites your dream foot, and you wake up swatting at yourself. Another beautiful night in the field. Dawn breaks, kind of. The sky bleeds from black to a deep pewter, heavy with fog, and the sun doesn't so much rise as sulk. You groan, not out of melodrama, but because your entire body has solidified into one large knot of damp agony. Your left calf refuses to extend. Your back has made a strange decision to cramp permanently. You vaguely consider whether this is what becoming a statue feels like. Etienne wakes up in a full coughing fit, and immediately accuses his blanket of betrayal. Mikkel tries to stand, but groans, and topples over like a sack of damp laundry. Someone in the next tent is already swearing at their boots, which froze overnight into tiny armored coffins for your feet. No one slept well. You emerge from the tent, blinking into the mist, and brace yourself for another day of walking, waiting, scratching, or if the commanders are feeling especially cruel, more formation drills. You shuffle toward the central fire, where some thin gruel is bubbling in a pot that looks older than time. It smells like sadness and garlic. You've eaten worse. Someone ladles a portion into your wooden bowl. You sip, immediately regret it. It's hot in the exact places your tongue wasn't prepared for, and somehow cold in others. Like the fire itself gave up halfway through the process. You find a beetle floating on top. You fish it out with a twig, and pretend it was seasoning. Historians often debate how common warm meals were during long campaigns. Some chronicles suggest hot food was a luxury, only possible when camps had time to set up proper hearths. Others say even the poorest camps found ways to boil anything, so long as it fit in a pot and didn't run away too quickly. You suspect both are true, depending on how desperate things got. Today, desperation is the soup's primary ingredient as the rest of the men trickle out, some limping, others yawning. The squire makes his rounds with a crude bucket of water. You cup your hands to splash your face. The cold shocks you awakened briefly tricks your scalp lice into thinking, they're drowning. They're not. You feel them regrouping. A call goes out from the center of the camp. Not the alarm, just the morning muster. You hate the morning muster. It's where you all stand in a loose line, trying not to fall asleep upright, while a guy with clean gloves reads off yesterday's events, today's tasks, and something vague about honor. He usually forgets halfway through and improvises. Sometimes he throws in an original poem. You're 90% sure he's making up half the names of fallen soldiers. Sir Wibbly of Crumpetshire is not real. No way. This morning's list includes a few deaths, 2 promotions, and 1 man punished for unauthorized foraging. What you know for a fact means he got caught stealing turnips from a nearby farm, while pretending to pray. Bold move. The sergeant finishes with a motivational speech, so tired it circles back around into charming. Something about standing tall, making your ancestors proud, and not letting Sir Wilhelm fall off his horse again. That last bit gets a ripple of restrained laughter. Everyone remembers. You're dismissed with a grunt, and the day properly begins. But today's not for marching or fighting, it's for maintenance. The word alone is enough to deflate your spirit. Today, you're cleaning, sharpening, mending, oiling, lifting heavy things that don't need lifting, pretending to check things while quietly dozing in a squatting position. It's grunt work, and yet somehow, it's sacred. Because if you don't take care of your gear will not take care of you. You start with your sword, a rusted pock-marked blade that's more angry crowbar than Excalibur. You run it along a whetstone, slowly, trying not to zone out. Each scrape is rhythmic, almost soothing in, till Etienne decides to sing. Again, he only knows one song. It's about a fishmonger's daughter. It has far too many verses. Meanwhile, your mail shirt is laid out on a log like a metallic rug of poor decisions. You begin oiling at cloth soaked in pig fat, rubbed into the rings one slow pass at a time. It's tedious, smelly, and strangely intimate. You whisper apologies to it for yesterday's battle. A fringe theory among some reenactors and scholars suggests that some warriors named their gear not just swords, but armor, helmets, even boots. A way of imbuing their tools with personality, or prayer. You consider this, then pat your mail and say, "Hang in there, Scratchy. It feels right." Your boots come next. They're less footwear now, and more mobile puddles. You wring out the wool linings, muttering something that might be a curse. Then you stuff them with straw and prop them near a weak fire. They hiss like angry cats. You decide not to sit too close. Around the camp, others are engaged in similar rituals. Someone is stitching up a torn gambeson with string and spit. Another is scraping mud off a shield, using the edge of a broken spoon. A pair of archers are arguing about whether feather color on arrows makes them fly straighter. A third tells them both to shut up, unless one of the feathers can grant wishes. There's even a small workshop going, if you can call it that, a forge, set up under a tent flap, bellows wheezing like an asthmatic dragon. A blacksmith is hammering out dents in helms, muttering that if people stopped using their heads like battering rams, he could actually get some sleep. You wander over with your battered helmet and hand it over. He grunts, takes it, and starts hammering. The blows ring out like tiny thunderclaps. You swear each strike makes your teeth vibrate. "Stop headbutting things," he says without looking at you. "Can't help it," you reply. "The things keep getting in my way," he snorts. By midday, you've sharpened your sword, aired your boots, oiled your armor, and rebandaged the cut on your arm with a strip of linen that smells suspiciously like turnip stew. It's the closest thing you've had to self-care since the campaign began. There's a brief lull in the afternoon. A few men nap openly. One is asleep face down on his shield, snoring like a bullfrog. You consider joining them, but instead, you just sit. Still, breathing for once, not doing anything. Not itching, not swinging, not yelling. Just being . And in that quiet, you almost feel human again, almost. You're awakened not by a horn, or a scream, or even Etienne's usual night terrors, but by the faint sound of something far more terrifying. Clanking, not the kind from sharpening or smithing. This is organized clanking, a slow, methodical march, metal scraping on metal hooves, thudding in rhythm. The sound of an approaching column. You snap upright. Your back protests, your knee seizes, and your helmet is mysteriously on backward, but none of that matters. Scouts reported movement. Someone says, you don't see who. Maybe it's the wind. Maybe it's a tree. At this point, you've learned to just accept information as it comes. The camp is already stirring, slowly, like old soup, beginning to boil. Men groan. Armor is strapped on with sleepy curses. There's no time for hot food, or even warm insults. Someone smears a half-eaten onion across his forehead. Probably superstition, possibly confusion. Today, something might actually happen. You strap on your sword, your greaves, your breastplate. Every buckle is a mini crucifixion. Every strap pinches something tender. The mail is still damp from yesterday's fog, and the gambeson smells like a cheese seller that's grown sentient and is now angry with you. Still, you suit up. And once again, you wait. The commanders are squinting at maps like they're sacred scrolls. You know those maps. They're smudged with grease, wine, and possibly blood. They're drawn by men who haven't seen the terrain in 20 years, and who think marshland is just a poetic way of saying grassy. One road on the map is just labeled probably safe. Historians still argue whether these hand-drawn military maps were functional tools, or just morale-boosting props to give the illusion of control. From what you can tell, it's mostly the latter. Your unit is called to move out. Again, you've grown as one. The march, today, feels different. Tighter. More alert. No one's joking. No one's singing. Even Etienne is quiet, which is either a miracle or a sign of incoming doom. The path winds through a shallow wooded rise. Tall trees loom on both sides. The ground is soft but not muddy. Good for walking. Bad for hearing incoming enemies. You're flanked by crossbowmen and a group of pike-wielders, who all look like they haven't slept since the last full moon. One of them carries a flag with a faded emblem you can't identify. Maybe it's a boar. Maybe it's a dog with a headache. Either way, it doesn't inspire confidence. Hours pass, or maybe it's minutes stretched by the tension. Suddenly a signal, arms raised. The column halts. You crouch behind a cluster of rocks. Peering through the undergrowth, you finally see it just barely. The enemy, or a part of them, anyway. A patrol, a small one, maybe 20 men. Spears, a few mounted. Too many to ambush alone, not enough for a full engagement. But you can feel it. This is one of those moments. A test, a poke, a brief skirmish maybe, or a standoff. Something to determine who's bluffing harder. You're ordered to stay low. Silent. The next 10 minutes are an exercise in pain management. Your thighs burn from the crouch. Your armor is pinching your shoulder. Your right foot has fallen asleep. Which wouldn't be a problem if it weren't encased in steel and about to be called upon to sprint. Every breath you take sounds like a small creak hand. Every creak sounds to your ears like a dinner bell for enemy archers. You watch the enemy patrol stop, adjust, move forward again. They're as cautious as you are. Maybe they're just scouting. Maybe they're bait. You glance at your sergeant, who gives you a hand signal you don't quite understand. Is that wait, or circle left, or I'm losing feeling in my elbow? Hard to say. You stay put. Another fringe theory claims that medieval armies didn't actually seek to fight as often as we think. That many skirmishes were just large armored games of chicken designed to provoke retreats or surrenders before actual bloodshed. The logistics of war were so brutal that if both sides could avoid combat and still claim victory, they would dot from your current position, heart pounding, knees shaking. That theory sounds very plausible. Eventually, the patrol fades into the trees. You don't chase. You're not ordered to. Instead, you wait another 20 minutes in silence, just in case. The suspense is worse than the fighting. Every snapped twig is a death knell. Every rustle in the brush is a phantom blade. Then dash, finally dash retreat. Not in panic, but in that slow, quiet slink reserved for soldiers who just dodged a fight they weren't quite ready for. The commanders will later call it strategic repositioning. You call it, thank you, merciful sky spirits. Back at camp, There's a hush. No one brags. No one cheers. It wasn't a battle, but it was something. A brush. A shadow of war. Just close enough to touch your spine. You eat a cold heel of bread. You swallow water that tastes like tin and moss. You sit beside Etienne, who says, "I think I peed a little." You nod. "Me too." Silence. The camp returns to normal. Gear check. A few fire-starting attempts. One man trying to make a sling out of a discarded belt. But something in the air has changed. A brush with danger always does that. It reminds you that death isn't just a story told by the fire. It's walking the same paths, only a few trees away. You lie down that night, fully clothed, half-armored, not even bothering to scratch the rash that's flaring up again on your thigh. Sleep comes in slow waves. Your mind replays the patrol, the almost battle, the tension like a rope drawn taut across your ribs. And yet, you're here, breathing, whole. For now. You wake in darkness. Not the soft kind, like twilight or candlelight, but the kind that presses against your eyelids and fills your ears. A black so thick, it feels alive. It takes you a few moments to realize you're awake, not dreaming. Then, you realize something else. You're not in your tent. You're on the ground, cold, muddy, exposed. Shouting erupts in the distance, muffled by trees and fog. Then the unmistakable sounds of panic metal clashing, hoofs pounding, a horse screaming. The camp's under attack. You don't remember getting up. 1 second you're lying in the dirt, the next you're running half-armored. Helmet bouncing in your hand like a dropped pot. Everything is blur and chaos, lit by torches swaying wildly as soldiers scramble to form lines. Or just escape. No. Grand charge. No trumpet call. Just noise and confusion. You rush toward your weapons, dodging a sprinting cook who's holding a ladle like a dagger. Behind him, Etienne appears, barefoot, clutching a crossbow and muttering, "Not again." Not again, like it's a bad dream he's had before. The enemy struck at the one time you didn't expect. When you were finally relaxed, you skid to your pile of gear, throwing on your breastplate backward before wrenching it into place. Your belt's gone. You tie your scabbard on with a strip of tent fabric. You don't even think to check if your boots match. They don't. One's Etienne's. He doesn't seem to notice or care. Historians still argue whether most medieval nighttime raids were strategic genius or just desperate acts of chaos. Some were carefully planned, some were more poke the bear and hope it trips. What's clear is that when it works, it's devastating. The night becomes a blur of movement. There's no line formation here. No glorious resistance. Just pockets of fighting torchlight flashing on blades, shadows darting through the smoke. You stumble into one of these knots, blocking a wild swing with your shield, thrusting forward on instinct. The man falls. Or maybe trips. You're not sure if you even hit him. You don't stop to check. You fight your way toward the main road where the carts are. That's where the center of the clash seems to be. And sure enough, there it is. Enemy soldiers, wearing mismatched armor and faded tunics, already rifling through supplies. They're not a full army, just a raiding party. But even a handful of them is enough to cripple your camp. You rush to defend a wagon piled with weapons. A man is trying to lift a sack of arrows, but drops it as you charge. You knock him back. He snarls. You snarl. It's a very animal moment. No words, just panic and exhaustion and the desire not to die while barefoot and wearing your tunic backward. Someone yells fire. You spin, they weren't joking. One of the tents is now ablaze, licks of flame tearing through the canvas like paper. Sparks fly upward. A sudden gust sends embers across the entire camp. You realize this isn't just a rat, it's a burn. They're trying to torch your supplies, break your lines, scatter the army before a real battle ever begins. Smoke blinds you. You drop to one knee, coughing, shield over your head. Through the haze, you see a cluster of soldiers dragging a water barrel. They slip. The barrel cracks open. One man starts scooping with his helmet. The urgency would be comical if it weren't terrifying in a far-off part of your mind. You remember reading about night terrors, not the kind that wake you in a cold sweat, but actual attacks waged under cover of darkness. They were rare, mostly because night fighting was dangerous even for the attackers. But when pulled off, absolute chaos. And here you are. In the middle of it, the wind shifts. The smoke clears just enough for you to spot Etienne again, trying to put out a fire with his cloak. The fire wins. He throws the cloak down and stamps on it, then yells at the flames like they've personally insulted his mother. You grab him and pull him toward the main supply tent, now glowing ominously at the seams. Together, you shoulder through a tangle of confused men, some injured, some just lost. You don't know how long the raid lasts. It could be 10 minutes, could be an hour. Time stretches when survival is the only clock ticking. Eventually, the horn sounds against 2 short bursts. That's the signal. Enemy retreat. Slowly, like the tide, the chaos ebbs. You stand there, chest heaving, legs trembling, sweat freezing on your neck. Around you, torches are being relit. Men call names into the darkness. Some get answers, some don't. The damage is everywhere. Half the tents are gone. Several wagons burned. At least 3 horses broke free and are now gods of the forest. The supply tent is half-charred but intact. You peer inside. Miraculously, the salt pork survived. The bread did not. A tragedy of war. One poor soul is standing in nothing but a loincloth and helmet, blinking at the rising sun. You throw him your spare cloak. He nods once and sits down in the ashes. In the aftermath, the commanders walk through the camp like mourners. No shouting now, no orders, just quiet inventory and the occasional muttered curse. The men are exhausted, and yet alive. You sit on a stump that used to be part of the latrine wall and let the adrenaline drain out of you like spilled wine. The ground is blackened, your hands shake. There's blood on your tunicures, or someone else's, you don't know. One of the scribes later records this as a minor disruption during the campaign's 2nd month. That's the version that history remembers. But you remember the screaming, the heat, the way the shadows moved faster than thought. And you remember something else too. You didn't run, you stayed. The morning after the raid feels like waking up after a storm, except instead of fallen branches and broken windows, you've got smoldering tents, half-melted helmets, and a guy stuck in a tree who still hasn't figured out how he got up there. Camp is quieter than usual. Not solemn, exactly. More like hungover. Not from drink, but from adrenaline. You ache in places that didn't exist before last night. Your calves feel like wood. Your neck clicks when you turn it, and your left hand doesn't seem to remember how fingers work. Etienne limps past, carrying 2 blackened spears, and says, "We lived." You nod, barely. There's no drill today. No marching orders. Just repairs. It's a strange sort of luxury, no one's barking commands. No horns in the distance. No ceremonial parades. Just the aftermath. You find yourself with a rare moment of stillness. So what do you do with it? Laundry, yes. The most cursed, most forgotten, most thoroughly medieval of tasks. You gather what you can: undershirts, torn leggings, the offending pair of Etienne's socks that may now be legally classified as a weapon, and head to the edge of camp where a stream burbles by, like it doesn't know the horror it just missed. You squat by the water, dunking fabric, scrubbing it against a flat stone. The way you were taught, or maybe the way you made up. You're not sure anymore. The water is ice cold. Your hands go numb almost immediately. It takes an hour to finish. By then, the sun has finally decided to show itself, peeking shyly through the clouds like a guilty child. You lay everything out to dry, using pikes as a makeshift rack. Someone walks by and jokes that you've invented warrior bunting. You consider throwing a boot at him, but your arm is too sore. By mid-morning, a supply team arrives from a nearby outpost. It's not much: some sacks of grain, a few bundles of replacement arrows, and a mysterious crate labeled only with a poorly drawn fish. Inside, salted eels. You eye them suspiciously. So does everyone else. The cook accepts the crate, like it's holy relics, and immediately begins boiling something. Within minutes, the entire camp smells like regret. Someone makes a joke about revenge. Stew. You pretend to laugh, but privately make a vow to fast until battle resumes. Historians still debate the actual nutritional value of what medieval armies ate on campaign. While salt pork, barley, gruel, and hardtack bread were staples. There are accounts of units surviving for days on boiled leather and wild onions. There's even one fringe report claiming a company in Bavaria once lived entirely on beer and dried fruit for a week. You believe it? You've seen Etienne do worse. You pass the afternoon mending your gear. A cracked shield gets reinforced with strips of leather. Your mail shirt is patched with what might be a bit of chain from a horse's bridle. Your boots are beyond hope, so you trade them for someone else's slightly less cursed pair. It's like inheriting someone else's blisters. Meanwhile, camp gossip flares up like wildfire. Who planned the raid? How did they slip past the scouts? Was it the locals? Were they bribed? Are the commanders hiding something? One guy swears he saw a ghost in the woods just before the attack. Another insists he heard someone shouting in Latin. Probably monks, he says, gravely. You nod, the way you nod when your aunt insists horoscopes control the weather. But under the nonsense, there's a real tension. Because now you all know how quickly things can change. How one moment you're asleep with a rock in your ear and the next you're swinging a sword in your underpants. How fragile the illusion of safety is. And how little separates you from becoming another name carved into a shield and forgotten 2 weeks later, by late afternoon. The commanders finally call an assembly. The sky is clear now, blue with streaks of gray birds have returned, cautiously. A few rabbits poke around the camp's edges. None of them are left alive for long. Sir Wilhelm speaks. He's bandaged across the forehead. Clearly took a knock last night, and his usually shiny breastplate is dented inwards like someone tried to use it as a drum. His speech is short, grim. He says the enemy is testing the line, that this was just a skirmish, that more may come. Then he says something that hits you harder than any sword. Dig in. We're here for a while. The camp exhales some in relief, some in dread. Digging in means fortifications, trenches, watchtowers, barricades. It means this is the new home. Until someone dies, or winter arrives. You feel it settle in your gut like a cold stone. The next task, you guessed it, digging, with shovels, if you're lucky. With helmets, if you're not. You and a dozen others are sent to carve a ditch along the eastern slope. It's hard, thankless. Work like trying to dig through stale bread with a spoon. Your hands blister within minutes. Your knees turn to soup. The dirt fights back. Etienne tries to lighten the mood by composing a digging song. It includes exactly 2 rhyming verses, and ends with a fart noise. He gets pelted with a clod of dirt by a unanimous vote. By the time the sun begins to set, the trench is 2 feet deep and crooked as a goat's smile, but it's yours. You've earned every splinter, every groan, and somehow, that matters. You collapse beside the ditch, too tired to itch, too sore to care. A raven circles overhead. Someone claims it's a good omen. Someone else swears it's the ghost of a guy who died last week. You shake your head. Tomorrow, the real work begins. The next morning doesn't feel like a beginning. It feels like a continuation of all the aches, smells and mild despair. You fell asleep with just slightly colder. The trench you helped dig has collected a shallow puddle of muddy rainwater overnight, which has now taken up permanent residence in your right boot. You try to wring it out. You fail. Etienne offers you a sarcastic blessing and calls it the holy squish. You are now a trench warrior. Digging in, as it turns out, is not just about trenches. It's about turning a pop-up murder camp into something resembling a semi-permanent war village. Watch posts, latrine zones, defensive walls, waste pits, and, worst of all, rotating sentry duty. You're assigned to the wall today, or what will eventually become a wall. At the moment, it's a jagged line of sharpened logs, lashed together with rope, prayers, and spit. It surrounds the camp in uneven clumps. Some parts are already 6 feet tall. Others are basically suggestive twigs. You're working on one of the latter. The logs are heavy, slippery. The mud offers all the support of custard. You and 3 others dig holes, wedge logs in, and pack the dirt around them with your heels. It's like trying to plant trees on top of a sleeping cow. After an hour, you've got splinters in every finger and a suspicious buzzing in your ear that might be a fly, or might be your brain giving up. You pause to scratch your back, using the point of a broken arrow. It's not hygienic, but it's effective. A passing squire offers you a goblet of water. You gulp it gratefully, then immediately gag. It's vinegar, diluted, with a hint of something sour. He shrugs. It's for dysentery. You eye him suspiciously. Does it prevent it, or cause it? He doesn't answer, just jogs away. Historians still argue over what the safest drinks were in medieval military camps. Water, while plentiful, was often tainted from stagnant pools or upstream toilets. Vinegar wine mixtures, known as pasca, were safer but tasted like a headache wrapped in feet. Beer was common too, but mostly reserved for better supplied armies. You get mystery juice. Back at the wall, a minor victory. Your section stands straight. For now, you reinforce it with spare rope and a wedge of flat rock. Etienne helpfully names it the fence that hates horses. You accept this with a nod. Then comes sentry duty. You're given the dusk shift, which means 4 hours of standing near a brazier, watching the tree line, and trying not to fall asleep upright. Your station is on the southeast rest technically. The good post, because it has decent visibility and fewer rats. The first hour is uneventful. The sky turns from pale blue to bruised lavender. Birds chirp. You hum a little tune, partly to stay awake, partly because silence makes you nervous. Second hour. You see movement. Your heart stops. It's just a deer. You hate it anyway. Third hour. Etienne sneaks up behind you, carrying a chunk of dried eel like it's a sacred relic. Mid-watch snack, he offers. You accept only because refusing would require more energy than chewing. It's chewy, salty, possibly still alive. Fourth hour, nothing happens. You begin to understand why sentries go mad. There's a special kind of insanity born from waiting eyes scanning trees, ears twitching at every leaf. You start naming shadows. You're pretty sure one of them winked at you. Eventually, your replacement arrives, bleary-eyed and clutching a rock like it's a weapon. You pass him your spear and stagger back toward your tent, which now features a second blanket and a deeply suspicious smell. You ignore both. The next morning, you're back on wall duty. But today brings an unusual surprise. A delegation arrives, not enemies, but ... envoys, from a nearby village technically neutral, but practically stuck between armies. 3 men approach, the gate wearing worn tunics and hopeful expressions. One carries a basket, the other, a scroll. The third just smiles in a way that says, "Please don't stab us." They're granted audience with Sir Wilhelm. No one knows what's said, but afterward, the order is given to build a new outpost nearby, to guard the route into the village. Guess who's on the team? You pack light. Sword, shield, cloak, the less moldy of your 2 socks. You Etienne. And 6 others head out with 2 ox carts and enough timber to build a hut that might survive a sneeze. It's a half-day's march to the village. The road is narrow, winding between gnarled trees and crumbling stone markers etched in a language no one recognizes. You pass an old shrine to some forgotten saint, just a moss-covered rock and a pair of rusted coins. The village itself is small. Thatched roofs, a single well, and goats that look like they've seen things. The locals greet you with cautious nods and a dish of boiled roots. You eat it. It tastes like earth and disappointment. You begin building. The outpost is meant to be simple, just a watchtower and a shelter. But simplicity is a lie. Every log must be cut, hauled, notched, and raised by hand. Nails are scarce, so you use rope and iron clamps. Every gust of wind threatens to undo an hour's labor. Etienne nearly crushes a toe. You accidentally hammer your thumb. The resulting noise is not medievally appropriate. By nightfall, the tower stands a 3-story skeleton of creaky wood, crowned with a lantern and an old flag stitched from 2 tunics and a dish rag. You sleep under it, exhausted but oddly proud. That night, the stars are visible, sharp and cold. The village is quiet. The outpost creaks in the wind like it's already haunted. You lie back against your pack, staring up, realizing for the first time in days that you're away from the main camp, from the trenches, the lice, the eel stew. Just for one night. It's not peace, but it's close. You wake to the sound of goat hooves, clip-clop, clip-clop, then silence. Then clip-clop again, like the goat is tiptoeing specifically to mess with you. You sit up, bleary-eyed, and peer toward the edge of the outpost. There it is, a scruffy, brown goat halfway up the new watchtower ladder, looking back at you with absolutely no shame. Etienne snores beside you, wrapped in his cloak like a sad burrito. The rest of the team is still asleep in various piles. You rise slowly, each joint staging a quiet protest, and climb the steps to the tower. The goat wisely decides to retreat. You take its place on the top platform and look out over the mist fields beyond the village. It's beautiful, in that grim, muddy sort of way only soldiers learn to appreciate. Below. The villagers are already moving, tending to chickens, chopping wood, fixing a roof. Life, as usual, stubbornly carries on, even when there's a war camp just beyond the tree line. You envy them, a little. Their tools are simpler, their days repetitive, but they're theirs. Back at camp, everything's borrowed. Still, it's not long before reminders of that life catch up to you. Around midday, a rider arrives, young, breathless, and so coated in dust he looks like a walking bread loaf. He's from your main camp. He brings orders. Return. Reinforcements are arriving. And with them, a real march. You pack quickly. Roll up your sleeping furs, tuck your half-mended socks into your pack, and bid a quiet goodbye to the outpost. The villagers send you off with a small basket of boiled eggs and hard cheese. You try not to cry. Etienne does cry, but only because he dropped an egg. The march back is uneventful, which in your world is both a blessing and a sign that fate is gearing up to punch you soon. The main camp comes into view. By dusk end, it's changed. For one thing, it's bigger. At least 24 new tents. Fresh banners. You spot unfamiliar tunics, different crests, polished armor that hasn't been rained on yet. Reinforcements. But it's more than that. There's tension. The kind that hums under every step. Like a string drawn taut. Someone's planning something. Your unit barely has time to report in before you're summoned. No, not to fight. To clean. Apparently, dignitaries are arriving. Highborn visitors. Maybe even a bishop. Which means everything from tents, to horses, to humans' needs. To be less filthy, less broken, and ideally not on fire. So instead of resting after your journey, you're now on presentation duty. You scrub mud off your armor with tufts of dry grass. You polish your helmet until it almost reflects your face. You regret this immediately. Your face is not ready. Etienne tries to fix the rip in his cloak by tying it in a fancy knot. It works, somehow. You suspect dark magic. By the time the dignitaries arrive, the camp looks passably not awful. They ride in with a small entourage of 6 horses. 2 banners. One guy who's clearly never stepped in mud before. The bishop dismounts like a man stepping onto holy ground, wrinkling his nose with theatrical disdain. You and the other infantry are lined up like toys. Shiny, stiff, uncomfortable. The bishop gives a short speech about duty, faith, and the sacred bonds of obedience. You hear none of it. You're too distracted by a bee hovering dangerously close to your left nostril. Eventually, you're dismissed. You flee to your trench and flop down into it like a corpse returning to the earth. Etienne follows and immediately starts snoring. The new recruits nearby shoot you nervous glances. They still think this is glamorous. Poor fools. Later, the commanders meet. You're not invited, obviously. But you hover near the edge of the tent, pretending to look for firewood, and pick up a few details. There's mention of a push, a real advance, one that might finally break the stalemate. The bishop brought a message from the crown, one that demands results. You know what that means? Marching orders. Probably within days, maybe hours. You don't sleep well, and when dawn comes, it's confirmed. The camp is alive with movement. Armor clinks, carts roll, orders fly. The air itself smells different. Charged, metallic, like the breath before a lightning strike. You eat quickly. Cold cheese, a crust of bread, water from your dented flask. Then you pack. There's no speech this time. No rousing address. Just a short bark from the commander. March, and off you go. The path winds through familiar woods, then across a field blackened from an old fire. A crow watches you from a half-burned tree. You salute it, half-joking. Etienne does the same. The crow looks unimpressed. The pace is steady. Not rushed, but not lazy. You get the sense this is deliberate. You're not just going somewhere. You're being seen going there. You pass several small farms. The people inside don't wave. Some hide. One throws a potato. You march past it. All by midday, you crest a hill end. There it is, the enemy. A fortified camp across the valley. Smoke curling from their fires. Tiny dots moving among tents. They see you. You know they do. But no one charges. Not yet. This is the game of giants now. 2 armies, 2 encampments, and a strip of no man's land in between. You're ordered to make camp. You drop your pack. Start driving stakes. Digging again. Always digging, as the sun begins to set. You look across the field. They're watching you too. Just like you're watching them. And somewhere, in that dying golden light, you realize something: the real war hasn't even started yet. The camp feels different now. Tighter. Sharper. The usual sluggishness of long campaigns. The endless waiting. The bickering over firewood. The casual fart jokes has shifted into something lean and tense. Everyone moves a little quicker. Eyes flick more often toward the horizon. Weapons are cleaned more carefully. Meals eaten more quietly. You're on the edge of something. That night, you don't sleep in your tent. You sleep beside the rampart, curled around your shield like it might have opinions about the whole situation. Etienne sleeps nearby, muttering about roast chickens and forgotten socks. You envy his ability to dream. At dawn, you're awakened by the sound of horns. Not the blaring, frantic call of battle, but something slower, rhythmic, like a drum roll made of wind. It's coming from the enemy camp across the valley. You climb the nearest watchpost, squinting through the early morning fog. There, across the field, movement, troop lines, shifting ranks, a show of force. They're not charging, just letting you know they're ready too. Your commanders take the bait, of course. Soon your own army is arrayed along the hill's edge, infantry in tight blocks. Cavalry positioned along the flank. Banners lifted and caught in the breeze. It's not an assault, it's theater. A stage play for 2 very nervous audiences. You stand in line with your unit. Armor tight against your shoulders. Sun just beginning to warm the steel. A buzz travels down the line. Etienne whispers, "I think I just became religious." You whisper back, "Let me know if it helps." The 2 forces face each other, like nervous dancers at a wedding, neither wanting to make the first move. Both afraid of tripping over their own swords. Eventually, the display ends. No clash, no charge, just the knowledge, etched deep into your bones now, that it's coming. Back in camp, the commanders begin final preparations. The armory is bustling, squires running with crates of bolts, a blacksmith fitting a damaged helm with a borrowed visor. The cooks are boiling what they call last meal stew, which seems to be made of lentils, regret, and optimism. You eat a bowl. It's fine. Mostly, then come the final rituals. A priest moves from group to group, offering quick blessings and a bowl of suspiciously murky holy water. You get a splash on the forehead. It runs into your eyes. Burns a little. Means it's working, he says cheerfully. Etienne kisses a coin and tucks it into his boot. For luck, he says. You consider doing the same, but realize your boots already contain 3 rocks and half a mouse nest. You opt for gripping your sword tighter instead. Historians debate what the mental preparation for medieval battles really looked like. Chronicles often describe noble calm or holy fervor, but archaeology suggests a more complex truth. Trinkets found in old battlefield camps, rabbits' feet, carved saints. Tiny wooden hearts hint at soldiers clinging to anything that gave them hope, or distraction, or just something to hold. You understand now. You want something to hold to, even if it's just a worn-out hilt, and the hope that today isn't the day you become a footnote. As the sun reaches its peak, orders are shouted. Final drills. Your unit forms up, shoulders square, shields locked. You practice advancing, stopping, turning. It's absurd, like learning to dance in the middle of an earthquake. But it helps. It gives you focus. Rhythm. You stop thinking about the 1,000 things that could kill you, and just think about the next step. Then the next. The wind shifts. A banner flaps violently. Someone shouts, "It's not battle yet," but scouts report. Enemy movement again. Small groups. Repositioning. Testing the line. Poking the bear. You're not the bear. You're the guy standing near the bear with a stick. You return to your post on the rampart. From here, you can see it all. The valley below, the enemy camp, the gathering storm. You wonder what it looks like from their side. Are they as tired as you? Are their boots soaked through? Is someone over there named Etienne telling the exact same dumb jokes? It's almost comforting. Almost that night sleep is a myth. The camp is 2 alive fires crackling, sentries murmuring, men sharpening blades that have already been sharpened twice. Someone sings a low song, a lullaby in a language you don't know. It floats through the air like smoke. You lie awake, staring at the canvas of your tent. Every creak of leather sounds like a bowstring. Every gust of wind becomes a whispered command. At some point, Etienne rolls over and mutters, "If I die tomorrow, tell my sister she still owes me a chicken." "Noted," you reply. He's quiet for a long time. Then, you scared. You consider it. "Yeah," you say. "You absolutely." You both laugh, quietly. The kind of laugh that keeps the dark away. At dawn, you rise. The horns are different. This time, no slow rhythm. No display. Just 3 sharp blasts. Attack. You move without thinking. Armor on, blade in hand. Helmet laced. Form ranks. March, your breath comes short. Your mouth tastes like ash and bile. The air is thick with the noise of preparation hoofbeats. Metal, prayer, and silence all blending together into a strange kind of music. You reach the line. Stand with your brothers. The valley opens before you. The enemy is forming ranks. Somewhere, a trumpet wails. Then the command is given, advance. You step forward, and so does history. Your boots sink into the soft earth with every step. The weight of your armor presses down on your shoulders, heavier than it's ever felt before, like your body knows something your mind is trying to deny. Ahead, the fog lifts in slow curls, unveiling the battlefield like a stage curtain drawn back with aching slowness. You hear your breath, your heartbeat, your footsteps, then everyone else's, in a deep rumbling rhythm that sounds like thunder coming from inside the soil. This is it. No more drills, no more waiting. Just the line, across the field. They wait 2 enemy troops in similar armor, holding similar spears, led by commanders who probably think the same thoughts and fear the same things. You realize with quiet horror, it's not us versus them. It's just humans, trying to survive. You don't have time to dwell on it. Your commander yells. The first volley of arrows sails high overhead, black streaks in the sky. You raise your shield, just like they taught you, bracing as they fall. The sound of arrows hitting wood, metal, flesh, it's like rain on a broken roof. You flinch. Anyway, the man beside you drops. You don't look at his face. You're moving now. Because the worst part about a charge isn't the sprint, it's the slow walk that leads to it. The part where you have time to think, time to see, time to wonder, what if this is the moment? Then the clash comes. You meet the enemy line with a jolt that travels up through your knees into your spine. Swords scrape against shields, spears snap. The air is filled with cries in command, some in agony. You're in it. You duck a wild swing, jab your sword forward. It hits something, someone. You don't stop. You can't. You keep moving. Your training takes over. Block, shove, strike, repeat. Your helmet tilts askew. Your shield is slick with something. You pray it's mud. Etienne is somewhere nearby. You hear him yelling something about goats, a joke, a battle cry. No idea, but it keeps you tethered. The lines shift. You're pushed back, then surge forward again. At one point, you trip over a fallen banner and nearly lose your footing. A hand grabs your shoulder. You turn, friend. He nods. You nod. No words, just survival. Historians often speak of the chaos of battle like it's poetry, but there's no poetry here. Just noise, sweat, screaming, and the strange, focused clarity that comes from knowing your life depends on your next breath. And then, like all storms, it begins to fade. You don't notice at first. You're still swinging, ducking, pushing, but the enemy line is crumbling. Slowly, like wet paper. A horn blares from their side retreat. They break. Some run, some fall, some surrender, and you just stand there, chest heaving, legs trembling, vision tunneling. You look around. The field is a mess of mud, weapons, and men, some moving, some not. You spot Etienne, shirt torn, limping, but grinning. "Still owe me a chicken," he calls out. You don't reply, you just nod. You're alive. Somehow, you limp back toward camp. No triumph, just exhaustion. You pass rows of makeshift stretchers, men being treated, water being poured, prayers being whispered. One knight kneels beside a fallen comrade, unmoving, hand on his chest plate. His lips move in silence. You reach your tent and sit. Just sit. You don't even remove your armor. You just lean back against a barrel and stare up at the slowly shifting clouds. Somewhere, someone is already writing this down, calling it victory, cataloging the dead, describing glory. But you know better. There's no glory in the mud, caked in your boots, in the shaking of your hands, in the smell of blood and smoke that clings to your cloak. Still you survived. For now, and in the quiet that follows. Something strange happens. You start to cry. Not from grief, not from fear, but from release, like the tension held in your body for weeks is finally letting go. Like some invisible hand has finally lifted from your chest. It passes. You wipe your face with a sleeve and look around. The camp is quieter now. The wounded sleep. The fires burn low, and just as your eyelids begin to droop, Etienne slumps beside you. "Tell my sister," he begins, then trails off and snores. You smile. You're both here, still for now, and now, the battle is over. The clang of steel fades, replaced by soft wind through the trees. The war drums are silent. The ground lies still again, dotted with trampled grass and forgotten helmets. And somewhere, far above the valley, the sky begins to lighten. Pale blue creeps across the horizon, gentle and shy. You sit at the edge of the camp where the world feels just a bit quieter. Your limbs are tired, your eyes heavy, but your mind begins to settle. Slowly, thought by thought, you made it through something hard. Not just steel and chaos, but all the waiting, all the hunger, the cold nights. The scraping of boots, the weight of the unknown pressing on your chest every morning. That's what real endurance looks like. The kind that no epic poem bothers to mention. In the distance, the sound of a bird cuts through the haze. Just one, a tiny thing. But it's enough to remind you that even in the shadow of a battlefield, life continues. Even here, the fire beside you has burned down to soft embers, glowing orange, warm and low. It hums gently, like a lullaby without words. Your breathing slows. Your shoulders ease, and the fog of fatigue wraps itself around you, soft as wool, deep as moss. You let go, just for a while. You've done enough. You've seen enough. And now, you rest. Good night, soldier. Good night.